Giant stalker, dragon stalker, crypt stalker, demon stalker, rift stalker, grown stalker, crypt stalker, scourge stalker, wind runner. I'm a pony, lead skill hunter. A death dealer, a life stealer. That's just the cost of being.
Welcome to episode 147 of the Hunting Party Podcast. This is Euripides from WoW Insider out DPS and Call to Auction.
And I'm Dark Brew from thebrewhall.com and the Brewhall on Twitter.
And I'm Alexander from the Hunting Party Podcast. Frosttime is not here this week.
Today,
go ahead.
No, what you're going to say is probably infinitely better than what I was going to say.
Oh, no, I don't think so. I was going to come up with some sort of mother joke, I think. But what were you going to say?
I was just going to tell him what the date was today, just in case everyone forgot. So I think the mother joke would have been better. But today is Saturday, October the 6th, 2012. And you want to participate in the chat room, but you're not registered, just go to the chat window and type, where is everyone? Because I don't know where everyone is today. We're missing all sorts of people.
We are, and specifically our honored guest was unable to make it again because of real-life priorities. And I suspect that what actually happened was that him and Frostheim are out camping. They just didn't tell us because, we're too far to be able to join them. So, anyways.
It's a Canadian thing. Your lovely moderator, as always, is me, Alexander, who will rank your questions by how do I get back to my gyrocopter because I'm bugged. Thank you very much, Blizzard. You can send your questions to me, Alexander, in a private message by left-clicking my name, or you can send your question to huntingpartypodcast@gmail.com.
All
right.
Until next
Let's
week.
see if I can get this right.
Oh, don't.
Today in the chat room, we are joined by Abelian314, Bellasky, Brucey SV, Xiami, Dome Splitter, Edion, Elepide, Gaitha, Gorbrax1, Rico Lances, Homer Jade, Hotshot Gaunt, Induates, Leilowin, Necri, PFC Stroud, Primoc, Sofrianer, Saya Scruffy, Shroud Riper, Slugslinger, Taekwondo, Tagurit, Warvini, and 18 guests.
Not bad. Pretty good. And,
better than I would have done.
Yeah, and Xiaomi's probably like the one listener that has to be happy when Frostheim isn't here because that's the only time that we're guaranteed to say her name correctly.
Fair enough.
He has about 10 different ways of pronouncing it. None of them are correct.
Canadians have like 30 different words for maple syrup.
I don't doubt that.
Hey, speaking of which, in important news, not technically related to hunters, but I'm going to tell you anyways. Remember all that maple syrup that was stolen from the Canadian Federal Maple Syrup Reserve?
Yes.
I'm not kidding. We have one of those. Well, we found it.
I have to ask if you really are serious about that.
No, that was dead serious. I don't joke about maple syrup. We found it, and it's all back where it belongs. And I assume that the people that were responsible for this heinous crime were put behind bars. So, yeah,
that's
was,
awesome.
That was important for you guys to know.
They probably had like sticky fingerprints all over the place. They were, who knows?
The kind of sleuthing that must have been involved, I imagine, was like straight out of a comic, which would have just been awesome. This should be like a new movie. So, as we mentioned, no BRK this week, but we do have some general news and some stuff that we should probably talk about. Well, do you want to go through the general news, Stark?
Yeah, I mean, this is non-hunter stuff, but interesting nonetheless. Blizzard announced that patch 5.1 will be coming to a PTR soon this week, which of course that's the second, will be the first content patch for Mists of Pandaria, and the fact that the expansion's barely a week old and they're already mentioning
so early
this thing coming to a PTR.
I'm level 88. I've got I haven't even looked at anything yet. This game is barely started. I've been skimming through quests. No, not even. I'm skipping all the quest text. I'm just looking at my map and going and doing the next thing, and waiting 45 minutes in queue for a dungeon. It's all too fast. I need time. I don't like that they gave me 5 levels to work through. I wish that I could just buy the expansion and poof, be the new max level, or more to the point, at which they wouldn't sell me an expansion, which they'd just keep on releasing tiers of content, the free ones. But This is just too soon. 5.1. I mean, we have raids out there. We have how many bosses available now in 10-man normal, 25-man normal, and heroic, and all that stuff?
I want to say 6 or 7 in the raid, and then you've got the world bosses out there as well. So yeah, and then there's more on the way. In a few weeks here. So LFR
Yeah.
opens next week, which would be nice.
It's too soon for 5.1 unless they don't release any content. But if they release like a new eye level worth of content and gear, I mean, I'm going to be lucky if I see the inside of a raid within the month. Seriously.
Right.
And if 5.1 launches before I get a chance to actually do anything in the end game, it's kind of ridiculous. It's just, they're always complaining about how much money and time it costs to develop content, but they don't give people enough time to do it. At least not like me.
Well, they didn't give the full details of everything that was going to be in patch 5.1, but my takeaway from that is it's not going to be another raid tier. And they're not every content patch isn't going to include a new raid, but it'll include like new daily quest hub. They'll advance the story, but they did mention that this change to the Valor, will you be able to use Valor to upgrade an existing item and increase the eye level of it, or make your existing gear better. That would be coming in 5.1, and that I find that to be kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, but the other thing is, if I get a minor number increase, like as opposed to 5.1 to 5.1.1, for example, or whatever, if it's a major like 5.0 to 5.1, I kind of feel gypped if I don't get like a new raid tier, because we only get 3 per patch. You get 0.0, 0.1, 0.2. 4, 0.0, 0.1, 0.2, and 0.3. That's it. And 0.0 is basically wasted on leveling. So really it's 0.1, 0.2, and 0.3. That means 3 tiers per expansion, and these expansions feel like they're coming faster and faster now, and every single time they do, it's a complete write-off of all the work you've done before this point, and it's another $50 or whatever out of your pocket.
Yeah.
I wish that they would only release those with real content in them, and I wish that they had given us enough time to actually experience the content before it becomes irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean the whole cycle is kind of interesting. I was talking about this with someone this morning, and the idea that when the new expansion comes out, and they basically reset all of our tunes, and it's like you've spent this last expansion, you climbed to the top of the mountain, and you've been sitting at the peak, and then all of a sudden they make the mountain a little bigger, and you've got to start all over again to climb to the top of the peak just to really get back to where you were previously. You know what I mean? It's not like
what they do is they level all the old mountains. They make them trivial and unimportant. And like right now, there is no. I mean, maybe the content, like the bosses and the trash mobs and the zones that were in earlier expansions could be fun, but they're fun for the value of the artwork. They're not fun for any sort of reward, except for maybe achievements. So it's like all the stuff that you have accumulated in your life in these earlier patches is basically vendor trash at this point, or something to be put into void storage. And we talked about this last time. I think that there should be a way to have some sort of value out of that beyond just cosmetic. But anyways, the other thing on in the general news is that apparently the game has become popular again. 2.7 million copies of this expansion were sold, and the subscriptions are back over 10 million. Now, I want to know who has World of Warcraft and doesn't buy the newest expansion. I mean,
yeah, I can never figure that out, and I always wondered how that would actually work. Maybe I should have like a second account that just only has the base version to see how limiting that feels, or in terms of what you can do or can't do. I just can't imagine not having the game and not having the expansions.
Yeah, I remember when I
auction vaults and stuff, because those wouldn't need to go to the new expansion. They just need to go to a mailbox.
Yeah, no, but there's some other. You can't. Generally, there's no point in having a second account for auction house stuff unless you have the ability to do something like milling or prospecting on it, because that's what you do is you have it open in another window, and you use auto hotkey to pass all your keystrokes through to the second window and translate them into, like, basically keybind your entire keyboard to the prospect macro. And then that way, as you type stuff and play your main account, you're prospecting them. That's the only reason people use secondary accounts for that kind of thing. And you can't prospect important stuff unless you have, the most recent expansion. So typically, secondary accounts for auctioneers will have the most recent expansions. I was going to say, when I was playing the first time around, I didn't buy I started in BC, and I didn't buy BC until I had a character capable of getting to that level. Like when I was at 57, I think I went out and bought BC. But I mean, aside from that, I guess there's a lot of people who just, have the game and aren't really playing it, actively or something. But 10 million is a lot of people, and that's probably including China, right?
Yeah, I think that's worldwide. That's not any one region in particular. That's just total numbers altogether. But it's a huge, huge number. Even when they were presumably bleeding subscriptions and we're down to like 9 million, it seemed pretty tremendous compared to anything else out there. Any other MMO?
Well, I can tell you that I've seen all kinds of old names just pop back up that I still had on my friends list. I'm like, holy mackerel, welcome back! Out of the blue. Yeah,
I mean, our guild is sort of filling up with players that played and left a while back, and now they're all resubbing, and who knows if they'll stick around, but they might. I think this is some of their best work, to be honest with you.
I do. Yeah,
pretty tremendous.
I gripe and complain a lot, but I agree with you. This is probably the best made expansion they've released, except maybe BC. I really like BC, but I think it's a little bit depressing when you log into the guild and you see like 10 or 15 level 90s on, and some of them haven't played. Like some of them, like you hadn't actually seen in like a year and a half. People that came back and they're already 90, and I'm still at the time level 87. I only hit level 88 just before the show.
Well, I was in a run the other day, and we had a monk tank that was a panda, the level 90.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I mean that blows me away more than someone who just came back and leveled their 85 to 90. I just wondering, and someone said it must be like refer a friend or something like that, where they must be getting huge XP bonuses or something.
Well, I've heard that the bonus, just the having all of your whatever gear, the stuff that scales with you and gives you a bonus to your experience gain.
Yeah, the heirloom.
Exactly, just having all that stuff makes leveling so fast. Like we have somebody in our my brother-in-law is leveling a monk, and he was saying it's ridiculously fast, and it's going to stay ridiculously fast right up to 85, because I think they've already gone back and given the 80 to 85 experience a boost.
Yeah, I believe they did, and yeah, the heirloom stuff is great for two reasons. One, they have those experience percentage games in there. Number one, and number two, it scales to be the best possible gear that you could get at whatever level you are. So it's better than any of the quest rewards or dungeon items and things of that nature. So it pretty much is really representative of the best gear that you could have on your tune, and makes you a little bit overpowered in some ways. So it's killing things easier. It's great stuff. And I think they added a pair of legs this time around too.
Yeah, for the profession, we got the profession one within a day or two, I remember, and we had the legs added. So I've got a level 75. Then I'm gonna have to level up to 90 at some point for my professions, and I'm gonna take advantage of that. So what else do we have here? Okay, Moshigun Vaults normal opened this week and was cleared immediately because it's normal.
Yeah, exactly, and that's no surprise that you'd expect any number of guilds to go in there and clear it. Just from our own realm, a couple folks in our guild found a pug run, like made up of people from some of the top guilds, and they've gone in there and killed 2 or 3 bosses, I think, this week. So we've had a couple of our folks manage to go in there and take a look at it, and so they liked what they're seeing. Yeah,
I've heard it's fairly good content.
They're laughing at the fact that here they can go step into a normal raid and defeat a couple bosses, but they may not have the actual gear necessary to be able to queue for the LFR that comes out on Tuesday.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. One of the things I'm not 100% sure about is how raid works. Raid gear works in 10 and 25 man normals. Have we gotten confirmation that they've decided not to make it like LFR was at the end of last expansion?
I have. Yeah, that came up for some discussion with some of our folks earlier this week. I think it works. I think LFR works the way it does, and then the 10 and 25 work like it did before with Master Looter and distributing the gear how you want to. Both 10 and 25 had the same loot tables. I think they increased the number of items that drop off a 10-man boss now.
Oh, really?
I think they maybe
That's
made it like 3 items instead of 2 or something. I think.
interesting, because they said that they wanted to the blue quote was, I don't think we've basically done a good enough job rewarding 25-man raiders, and I was expecting that that would imply that the next increases we saw would be on the 25-man side.
But the other thing that's happened this time around is these elder coins that you can get, which is kind of a cool thing. So if you down a raid boss and you have one of these elder coins, you'll get another loot UI pop up, and if you want, you can spend one of those coins, and you'll either get gold or you'll have a chance of getting an actual epic item that I think is from that boss's loot table. And if you do get the item, it's going to be something specific to your class and your specs. So it's something that you'd actually be able to use, which is
Okay, so
a
that's
new mechanic.
Yeah, that's kind of like the LFR reward that you would get.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just very nice. It's just an extra roll, if you will, against the boss. So if you kill a boss in the raid and he doesn't drop an item, or someone else gets an item that you want, you can toss him one of those coins and have another shot at it potentially.
Yeah, except that it's unique to you. It's not like you can toss in a coin, another piece of loot shows up, and the master looter decides where it goes, right?
No, so it's specific for you. So it's a chance for you to get an item off the boss that you could use that you need. So there might be some strategy in terms of when you want to use them, how you want to spend them, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
again, it takes a little work to get them. I mean, you get them from there. I think there's a weekly quest. You can turn in this quest once a week, and you turn in 90 like lesser coins, and they'll give you 3 elder coins. And of course, you get the lesser coins from doing all the daily quests that are out there.
Okay, it's like 1 lesser coin per daily quest.
1 to 2. 1 to 2.
Oh god, that sounds atrocious.
Well, it's not so bad. I mean, there are enough daily quests. I mean, I did a bunch of dailies this week, and
I know.
I did my weekly. I already have enough coins for the next Tuesday when it resets to, you know what I mean? Turn in the quest
Yeah.
to get my coins with that. So if you spend
save the coins up, right?
I believe so. I don't know that there's a limit.
Okay. Well, I guess you could just save them up until the first. Can you use more than 1 per boss?
I think just 1 per boss. That I'm not 100% sure on. I would figure it'd probably just be 1 per boss.
All right. Yeah, because then I was going to say save them up until your raid is clearing the bosses that you need, and just use them all at the same time.
Yeah. No, someone in the chat room, Layla in the chat room, said only 1 per boss, which makes sense.
Yeah. All right.
And there's no guarantee you'll get a piece of loot, like you said. You might spend.
Well, that's why I was going to suggest using them all at once.
Yeah, I mean, you'll always get something, so it's not like you're never going to get anything. But
well, I imagine that the chance of getting that something being useful loot is pretty low, though.
Yeah, like I said, you might get a pile of gold. I don't know how much gold you would get, but
speaking of piles of gold, in their never-ending quest to ensure inflation, they've made it so that when you're in a group, if you roll greed, not need, not disenchant, greed on an item, and you win, in addition to getting the item, you get a gold value equal to whatever your roll was. So if it says that you won a greed roll on a 70, that means you get 70 gold. Which in and of itself doesn't sound like that big a deal, except that you can do it even if you're the only one eligible for the loot. So if you just have a friend who's about to log off, invite you to a party, log off, and then you just go about your merry way doing your dailies or questing or whatever it is you do, every time a green pops up on one of these mobs, you have to loot on it. It's set to group loot, so you have to choose need or greed. So pick greed, you'll always win, and you'll always get gold.
Interesting. I wonder if they'll fix that so that there has to be.
I think so. I think they really like. Honestly, inflation is good for them because it takes the money out of the people like my hands and puts it into the money, puts it into the hands of people, average players. Because anybody can do this.
Yeah, and back to the coins real quick. Someone in the chat room mentioned that you can only have 10 at one time, so you can't stockpile them indefinitely. So they encourage you to spend them at some point.
Can you use them on the Shaw of whatever, the world boss?
Yep, Layla in the chat room mentioned that she did it on the Shaw of Anger about half an hour ago. So that's probably worth doing because I think that's where you get your tier gear and stuff like that potentially. So,
all right. And the Shaw you can only kill once a week, right?
Yeah, I think you can be eligible for loot off the boss once per week. I think you could probably join in a group and help kill it more than once.
Yeah, apparently there's been all kinds of shenanigans, like PvP shenanigans on that boss, even on PvE servers, because all it takes, if you have a raid of people working on the Shaw, is for one guy to stand within range of the boss, flagged, and all of a sudden everybody using AoE gets flagged, and so do the healers, right?
Right. Well, we was talking to one of our guildmates. They didn't do the Shaw of Anger. They did Galleon, which was one of the other world bosses. So what had happened was they had their group together. They were in the process of forming their group and getting people organized, and then they had a few hordes show up, and they started pulling the boss. And then people started attacking the horde, and they were flag PvP, and so they just got into all these fisticuffs. But the long and short of it was what the horde people were doing was basically disrupting the alliance folks that were there trying to do this boss until enough horde got there and got organized to form their own raid and pull the boss and then defeat him is what ultimately happened.
Yeah, which is just because the alliance that were there didn't have any PvPers with them. But I'm imagining as a service that one could offer, you just take an RBG group, like 10 people that are all in PvP gear and know what they're doing, and they can prevent anybody from the opposing faction from killing this boss, because they are capable of CCing and killing a tank with basically no effort, just very quickly. And, I don't know how much, I suppose if the RBG team is in your guild, they'll probably do it for free, but I imagine that RBG teams who do want some money could probably use this to get some, go ahead.
Yeah, I said, it'd be interesting to see how this plays out with these world bosses as the weeks go by, as the expansion goes by. I haven't tried to get in a group yet to take one down, but
I love world PvP. I mean, I would probably do this just for fun, just because I like ganking horde. If I see some big progression server from the opposing faction sitting there trying to get their Shaw this week, I'll be like, not on my watch. I'll get my RBG team together, go and CC all their healers, and then just insta-jib their tank or something, just for fun.
Yeah,
because then they would all turn on you, and it would become a big huge world PvP event until everybody got bored and left.
Yeah, which I think is something that people have wanted world PvP. I think there are a lot of people out there that like world PvP and find it lacking, and this is probably a good way to incent it. And unlike places like...
Unless you just want to kill the Shaw and get out of there,
Right. Which I'm sure there's plenty of people that just want to kill it. I don't even know much about it. I don't know how long it respawns, if it's 2 or 3 times a day. Is it almost... I don't know. Haven't read up on that one to know what the availability is on him.
Yeah, I hadn't read up on it either, but I did see a blue post saying that it'll be less predictable but more frequent. So apparently they decided that it was too predictable and not frequent enough.
Yeah.
Speaking of all this raiding and stuff, LFR and Heroics are going to become available this week at the same time.
Yep, that's right. So LFR, currently if you go into the game and you pull up the raid finder, it'll tell you that the item level requirement for LFR is 463, which is the same item level, the heroic gear that you get for the 5-mans. But there was a blue post indicating that they were considering bumping that down to 460, making 460 the entry level, but cautioning people that you still should be appropriately geared to take out the bosses.
Yeah. Well, I remember for a while LFR was actually kind of hard, but that was back when all the good raiders were still doing it. And then as the average gear level increased and the good raiders stopped doing it, and the bad and AFK raiders kept doing it, and kept steamrolling the content, I guess that's just sort of the cycle, right? You start off with a whole bunch of people and as good gear as they can possibly get, properly gemmed, properly enchanted, know their class, know how to play, doing LFR with the lowest gear that it'll get done at. That's when it's challenging. But then, eventually the ambient gear acquisition in this game catches up for everybody. Everybody, those players, initial players, stop needing LFR, and all the other people who do only LFR typically, they're going to be less likely to be, as good of a player because they're not going to have as much experience in a raid. And,
right.
All the experience I had with LFR after that initial time was pretty frustrating, but I'm looking forward to the initial LFR for this tier again.
Yeah, like you said, the initial should be good because you're going to have all the raiders from all the guilds and everything, in there just to try and get as much gear as they can to help bolster their time spent in the normal. And it's kind of like that with the 5-man heroics too. I mean, I really like the way they did those, that they didn't make them too challenging, that they made it fairly easy for a random 5-man group to go in there and clear that. And they're only getting easier now because more and more people that are doing them have the gear from them, so it even makes it even faster and easier. Although one of the downsides is we're starting to get to this point where people need specific gear off specific bosses. So if they don't get the loot they need, especially if it's off the first boss, we have seen people drop. And that's kind of frustrating.
If it's a tank or a healer, that's frustrating. But
yeah, it's usually a healer.
yeah, that's kind of frustrating. But the DPS lineup is usually 45 minutes, so they're not going to leave. We should probably talk about some of these hotfixes here. Looks like Thrill of the Hunt was not properly activating on Glaive Toss, Power Shot, and Kill Command.
Yeah, and along with that too, Explosive Shot wasn't triggering it either. So there was a couple of hotfixes related to Thrill of the Hunt. And
yeah, you're right. I didn't even see that. It was down the list a little bit here.
The interesting thing about the Explosive Shot, though, is if you've got the lock and load proc going on, then they won't allow you to proc. It won't trigger Thrill of the Hunt.
That's interesting. My experience as BM, and this is before Kill Command was hotfixed, is that Thrill of the Hunt was basically always up in a boss fight. It just, I don't know, maybe it's just because of I'm still a low enough level that it hasn't yet adjusted or something like that, or I don't know.
No, it just seems to proc quite a fair bit. I've seen it as both BM and survival. I've run kind of back and forth between those two, depending on what I'm doing. And Thrill of the Hunt. I see, and a lot of people seem to like that talent and seem to be taking it for no other reason than it's a passive ability. But it seems to have a fairly big uptime to the point where it's almost.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it has a long uptime, almost to the point where it's annoying because you feel like you can fire a lot of arcane shots and things in there, and if you're not paying attention, your serpent sting ends up falling off because you haven't had a need to fire off a cobra shot in between.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, it gets to the point where you basically never worry about focus. You just fire nothing but arcane shots, kill commands, and refresh your sting every time you forget.
Yeah, but the downside to that too is with the gear, even the stuff out of heroics, like the stat values, my secondary stats aren't in any way optimized. So I've noticed that the haste is. I know it's not a great stat for hunters, but I mean it does impact your cast times for certain shots like Cobra Shot. And so there are times where like my Cobra Shot cast time is at 1.9 seconds, and I'm just not used to that. I mean, I'm used to it being more down like 1.5 range, and so, I'm casting Cobra Shot to refresh a sting, and I realized, I may not have given myself enough time here to get that cast off.
That's interesting. That's one of the things I'm not looking forward to is all the adjustments at that level. Oh, speaking of haste, actually, that just reminded me. One thing that a lot of leveling hunters may not know is that the engineering trinket, the one that takes 3 cogwheels and has it has no on use, but it has a random chance of summoning a mob to help fight with you for a little bit. I think it's called some sort of Dragonling or mechanical something.
Yeah, it's the Ghost Iron Dragonling.
That's it, Ghost Iron Dragonling. This expansion, you don't need to be an engineer to use cogwheels or that little trinket, and it's a 450 eye level with an 87 minimum level. So if you, which comes in quite nice as you start, your haste coefficient starts going down drastically at about that time. So you start feeling like your Cobra shots or whatever are just taking forever. Well, you can get one of these things and fill it up with haste if that's what you want for leveling.
Yeah.
Personally, I did hit expertise and haste.
I would say if you want one, I can make one for you. I've got some, but it sounds like you've already got one.
Well, the beautiful part is that these are used for leveling for Enchanter, for Engineer. So they're just, I think the trinket was 100 gold, and each cogwheel was 80 gold. So I spent like less than 400 gold on a pretty darn good trinket, better than what I had, better than the I think it was a 400 plus eye level something or other from DS Dragon Soul.
Yeah, it'd definitely be better than, like I said, it's good for leveling and while you're waiting to get trinkets out of the 5-man heroics. It's definitely worthwhile. The only thing I was a little disappointed is those cogwheels are unique equipped, so you can only have one of any particular stat on
Well,
your
that's
gear.
disappointing for engineers,
Yes.
but for me, the fact that I can have any is amazing because
Yeah,
it's like
that's true.
600. That's a lot. Like your gems right now are what, 300 for a blue gem, or how much does a rare quality gem put into your gear of a secondary stat? I think it's like 300, right?
I'd have to look, but yeah, something along that. It's yeah, the numbers just seem ridiculous, but yeah,
They
they're up
seem
there.
ridiculous to the eyes that are used to looking at the old stats, right? But
It's like 300,
you know,
320, something like that.
yeah, something like that. Anyways, so
But
that's go ahead.
no, I was to say, yeah, because I have that trinket because I'm an engineer and I also made the engineering goggles, which take the cogwheels at all. So I was really hoping to put, hit expertise maybe in there and get 2 sets of those as a way of uh, easing the reforging, that I would have to do into those stats. But they're unique equipped. So, but it's still pretty nice. Like I said, that's 5 stats because that's 5 cogwheels at 600 a pop for secondary stats, which is pretty darn good.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess for you, you would take like expertise, hit, crit, haste, and mastery would be the
Yes.
5 that you would take.
Yep.
And that's 600 of each. As an engineer, that's pretty darn powerful.
Yeah.
Of course, three of them are not engineer specific. Anybody can use. Although that's going to be interesting because that means when I start getting real trinkets, I need to decide whether the 1800 secondary stats are better or worse than a real trinket. So, anyways,
I think the real trinkets are probably better. I mean, there's some of them that give you a bunch of agility. Some have like there's one of the trinkets I think has like 847 agility or something like that. So I mean, it's definitely. I don't think it's a big contest. I think it's probably no contest between what you get.
Yeah,
out of
that's
that
true. I should probably think of keeping Wrath of Enchanting instead of my Mercurial or whatever Alchemist Stone. Well, yeah, you mentioned you've been playing Survival and BM. How I'm still not 90. How is Survival doing in endgame PvP endgame rating?
I haven't done any raiding. I'm still running the 5-man heroics, but one of our guildies, like I said, did a 10-man Mogushan vaults, and they killed the first boss, and they said he linked over the damage meters and basically said, hey, and on the top of that particular fight was a hunter who was survival, and he linked me the guy's name and said, hey, go look this guy up, as if to see what he was doing gear wise and everything else. So they had a hunter in that group who was doing pretty well. Seemed to do about 50k DPS on that particular fight. So it sounds like the hunters, we'll have to see. Could certainly be competitive.
All right.
With some of the other classes this go around, but I think it's still very early to see exactly where they fall. I don't know that there's enough data out there to make that determination.
Yeah, I was going to say, because what we simmed in beta was that BM would be the best spec by a little bit. And what we're seeing on live, at least in the 5-mans, from your personal experience, have you seen that that's not the case? Is Survival pretty either ahead or pretty close?
I think they're both pretty close, at least for me personally. I'm not noticing a huge difference between the two, and there's some fights where I want to go Survival just because it's a little bit of wonkiness in terms of the mechanics. What is it? The Gates of the Setting Sun? There's one fight there where the final boss, you have to hop into a cannon and launch yourself onto the top of this bug and then attack this weak spot. And to my knowledge, the pet doesn't come along with you for that ride. So there I find Survival to be the way to go there and not Beast Mastery.
Fair enough. We do have some more hotfixes. Scattershot is now properly breaking when damage is done by any source. I had always wondered about Scattershot because I know that's what it was supposed to do, but I don't think this is a recent bug that they're fixing either. It felt like Scattershot was lasting a lot longer than it should. Like, I know it's supposed to be just sort of get them out of my hair for a couple of seconds so I can do something like trap them or run away or whatever. But I had actually started using it in PvP just in the middle of my rotation. Every time I saw them doing something I didn't have the silence for, or if it was one of those things that they were doing that I can't interrupt, like, for example, a Cobra shot from another, or an aim shot from a hunter, I would use a scatter shot because it's like a stun and it interrupts everything. And expecting them to immediately get control back because I have all my dots ticking, my pets chewing on them, and I'm in the middle of firing a shot. I probably got 2 about to land. But sometimes it seems like the scattershot debuff would just stay there for a lot longer than I thought it should. So I suspect that that's what they fixed. I haven't had a chance to test it because I haven't been doing much more than incidental PvP lately. But
Interesting.
speaking of which, I find it still pretty helpful to have a full set of the last expansion's PvP gear on you, just in case. Because the other day I got jumped by a group of two or three horde at my level, and just questing. And I think how was I forget why I was flagged already. I think I had logged out flagged, and I logged back in, and I had 5 minutes left on my timer. Anyways, I logged in, and I just got jumped by three people, and luckily enough, I was still wearing my PvP gear, and it does make a difference. Even though all the coefficients are down and everything, even at like level 86 at level 87, it's kind of fun. I mean, to be able to. We're not on a PvP server, so we live in a different world than a lot of our listeners, I'm sure. But deterrence now properly prevents the stun effect from Warbringer, which is a warrior talent. That's definitely a PvP change. I have not, unfortunately, played a warrior, and I don't know enough to know what this talent does.
So Warbringer, what it says is your charge also knocks a target to the ground and stuns it for 3 seconds. So that sounds like that would not be cool. So you're in deterrence, and he's
the worst.
and he's stunning you for 3 seconds. So yeah, I can see why that needed to be fixed. Well, that's
fair enough.
The final note too from them said many beasts are now properly able to be tamed. So I don't know what wasn't tameable, but if you had tried to go and tame something that saw a beast out there and it said it cannot be tamed, go back and take a look. It probably can be tamed, but it's not something I had specifically run into myself through the course of leveling. So I don't know what was impacted by that and what wasn't.
Yep. All right. Well, yeah, I know I just got my... I noticed a porcupine, so I picked one of those up. I noticed a quillin at one point when I saw a quillin in Stormwind. I'm like, wait, what is... Oh, that's so cool. I gotta get those. But I've been using the Spirit Beast pretty much exclusively since I started leveling. It's really nice. That little heal is pretty strong, actually. And it's saved my bacon a few times for sure.
Yeah, no, I like the Spirit Beast. Sometimes, depending on in the 5-mans, I'll bring a Spore Bat because of the buff that it brings. I think that's a spell haste. That seems to be helpful.
What?
I'm sorry?
Rogue Anus Bleeding Spore Bat.
Yeah, that's the one. but the Quillin, I bring him all as much as I can when I can, and I've had to use that, like I said, the battle res ability that he has several times now through the course of the 5-mans. And the nice thing about the 5-mans is there's no limit on how many. The only limit to how many battle reses you can have in a given encounter is limited by the cooldown, of course, of your battle res ability. So if you have 3 classes in there with a battle res ability, then you can use all 3 if need be. But if you're at that point where you need to use all 3, you're doing something wrong in these 5-mans. I mean, you've got bigger issues, but I have found it to be helpful from time to time. So I kind of like that Quillin a fair bit. But then again, it's also an exotic pet, so that sort of gives Beast Mastery a little bit of an edge there.
That's true. Yeah, that's a very good point.
But I like Beast Mastery so far. I mean, like I said, I've been running that more than I have Survival. I'm not overly thrilled, though, with the level 90 talents, and I guess you haven't had a chance to play with those so much yet. But
I've been looking forward to it, though. I really want to try. I think it was Power Shot that... what was his name again? The PvP guy...
Zumio.
Was telling us about. I
tried Power Shot just one day for PvE, and it's got the knockback associated with it. So it's not great if your pet's got 2 or 3 mobs and he's beating up on them, and you fire Power Shot and knock them all away. Doesn't work so well for that. But I would imagine for PvP that's going to be a nice thing. I mean, it's just got that long cast time, but it's like Cobra Shot and other things that have a cast time, so you can ratchet that down by increasing your haste. So as you get better gear, I would assume that the actual cast time on that's going to drop a fair bit.
Do your auto shots still continue to go off while you're casting it?
Don't know. I didn't really look for that, and I didn't really keep the shot for very long, so I haven't spent much time with power shot.
Okay, because if it's like aim shot, we don't know whether it was a bug or by design, but that definitely didn't for aim shot.
Right.
But worth looking into.
Glaive toss is the one that seems to math out the best, and the one that I see most people, using it in their arsenal. So that seems to be the talent of choice right now. I just find it kind of boring. It's just another shot that fires a couple of glaives, and it doesn't look like it's doing much. So, I mean, I'd have to look at the numbers, I guess, to see how powerful it really is. But I'm just not that impressed with it. I really, really like Barrage, at least from the way that works. I mean, it's like you just stand there. It's a channeled ability, and it's an AoE, and it's just like you're sitting there with like a machine gun, But I've had some issues with this in the 5-man, and I thought I expect it to work like multi-shot, but it doesn't. Like multi-shot, the tank will round up a bunch of mobs, and you just fire multi-shot, and it just, whatever one you're targeting and the ones around it, it hits. And I've noticed with Barrage, it kind of does that, but every now and then I'll see a little bullet go off to the left, off to the right, and the next thing I know, I'll see a pack of mobs that we weren't engaged with get hit and start running towards the group and wiping us. So it seems to have a much more a wider range of mobs that it can seek out and find and hit. And so I've been very hesitant to use that ability in some of these 5-man dungeons. So I don't know if it's meant to work that way or if it's a bug, but
sounds like it would be a bug. I mean, just based on the way you're describing it, if it's hitting a specific group and it's just going off and pulling another group, that's probably not intended.
Yeah, it's just like it, like almost like I'm shooting laterally too. It's like, oh god.
Yeah.
So
that's not so much.
I've been hesitant to talent that one now for some of the trash pulls. But of the 3 talents, I don't think it's probably my favorite, but I don't know that I'll use it a lot because of that one issue, and because, in the raids especially, since it doesn't seem to do as much damage as Glaive Toss, at least according to the Zahara's spreadsheet. Whatever, Glaive Toss just seems to come out ahead.
Okay.
But
all right.
But I've had some fun with this, and the 5-mans, like I said, are fun. I'm enjoying them a lot. I mean, I did not run much of the 5-mans in Cataclysm, mainly because they were so hard at first that I was just deathly afraid to go in there with a pug with 4 other random people. And with the the mob dungeons, I have no issues just queuing up and going in with a random group.
Not even just a random group of idiots. Like if you get me in your group, if you're unlucky enough to get me in your group, I don't read, before I queue up, man. I queue and I go in and I just fight here. That boss. I owe myself a bit of Huntard. I've been paying my dues, as Frostheim would put it, for a long time. I like to do bosses where I learn by dying. So the first time I went into that brew place, nobody told me I had to click on bubbles, and I'm just like, wow, look at all these pretty bubbles, and I'm just sitting there pounding away on the boss. I'm like, what the hell is this silence? Why can't I do anything? Mm-hmm. But, the point is I do eventually learn after doing it once or twice, like standing in the water and one of the other bosses, I'm like, oh, I'm dying really fast. Luckily, I happen to have a spirit beast, so I'll heal myself right up, but I didn't move. I'm like, man, this guy does a lot of AoE. I better use exhilaration. Damage. Man, it's a good thing we have a good healer. This guy does a huge amount of... Oh, wait a minute. I'm standing in something. Dope. Or there's another boss that has all these traps in his room, like Indiana Jones, and he's spitting arrows and glaives at you and stuff. Like, I never know where. That one, to be completely honest, I'm like, is there anything I should know for this fight? He's like, don't stand in anything. I'm like, oh, I'm a raider. I can do this. I cannot do this. There is no place you can stand safely, according to my screen. I tried them all. I was running around constantly, and no matter where I was getting shot in the back by an arrow from somewhere. I couldn't even... I know they were coming out of a wall, but it didn't look like they were going in the same direction every time. And there's so many of them. It was like, fighting an army of angry, chefs throwing knives at you.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. That's the Moshigan Palace, that last boss there. Apparently there is a place where the tank can kind of position him to make life a little bit easier. But yeah, I know what you're talking about. There's, as you say, spears and knives and weapons floating around. There's a little laser that puts a
So
fiery
chaotic.
circle on the ground. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. But
Well, when the ground underneath me starts to explode, I can typically get out of the way
Yeah.
before I take any damage. That's sort of a built-in reflex from all the years of raiding. But
yeah, the Shadowpan Monastery has a boss that puts a little white circle underneath you, and I mean, there's no time to move for that. I mean, and there's times where you're just like, I know I moved, and it doesn't kill you, but it kind of pops you up in the air, and you take
well, you
some
can
damage.
just use deterrence
Yeah.
and save yourself some damage, or you spirit heal, or if you happen to have it, you can use your exhilaration. I like saving exhilaration for times like that. There's another boss that always kills your pet. Some of the trash kills your pet. I think it's actually that boss with the bubbles. Like when the brew guy is like forming this boss out of beer, one of the trash packs that pulls ahead of time, or one of the first few things that you have to kill. For one reason or another, the first 2 times my pet ended up dead. I had to res him. But which, by the way, it's nice that it's just a baseline ability for ferocity pets to have Spirit of the Phoenix or Heart. Of the
Oh,
Phoenix.
that's right, Heart of the Phoenix. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool. But
the other thing the other thing too is I know there are some fights in there, like you've seen in the raids where the door shuts. When the fight
I
starts.
lucked with the gorilla boss, the King Kong boss.
I've had my pet locked out of a few of those, and that's so frustrating.
You can dismiss him and summon him again.
If I can, so I've tried that, and I either get like a line of sight issue, pet not close enough. I've had those kind of issues where I haven't been able to do that.
Yeah, I can see that being. I only discovered the last time I ran that you can jump on the barrel and run into the boss. I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. So I mean.
Oh, you didn't? Yeah, no, that's great. And I think it gives him a debuff, so he takes more damage. So the damage you do.
Oh, okay, that's what it's for. I'm just like 50,000 damage. That's like 1 crit. I'm like, what am I doing? I don't care. This is really fun. I'm gonna do it again. What if I could train my pet to do this? Yeah, no, I kind of like the 5-man design. The first time I went in there, though, I was just I'm like, there was a bunch of monkeys, and they were dancing. There was like a disco kind of feel to it. I'm like, come on, this is really cheesy. Like this is supposed to be a fantasy video game, and this is clearly a disco. And these are really, really clearly monkeys. I mean, they're called party animals.
Yes, party animals.
I just, that was too much. But, aside from that, the rest of it was okay. I mean, the crazy bunnies with hammers, I guess it's another kind of silly one. I didn't know what the hammers were for. I kept on picking them up, and I'd be like, oh, I see a lot of bunnies. I better be multi-shotting. Like a boss.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, because, Blizzard introduced that little extra action button we saw in Dragon Soul and maybe a few other places. And, yeah, they liked it, I guess, and they brought it out for a few encounters here that you have to, push the button at certain times. I mean, not with the same dramatic effects as we had with, say, Ultraxion, where if you failed to push the button, you were just dead, but nothing that severe. But they brought it back for this expansion. So yeah, the 5-mans are good. I mean, for a while, I didn't think any hunter gear existed whatsoever. I mean, I must have the first 4 or 5 heroic runs. I did nothing, absolutely zero gear. So I finally moved from nothing dropping to now I'm at the point where nothing I need drops. So it's only stuff I already have.
Man,
I don't need
so far ahead of me. I'm still. I have no idea how long it's going to take me to get through these last 2 levels. I just dinged at 8 today. And I think the last 2 are obviously going to require a lot more work than the first ones did. So I don't know. Hey, let me ask you a question about reputation. There's about 3 reputations in particular that I know are really important once you hit 90, right? These are the guys that you have to go into dailies for every day in order to get your rewards, right?
Right.
That's the Golden Lotus, the Klaxi, and what was the other one?
You're thinking maybe the Shadowpan or the August Celestials.
Oh boy, I guess there's more than 3.
Yeah.
There was 3 that I picked on because I knew that they were the professions. When I was doing the research on the professions, I'm like, okay, blacksmith needs this, tailoring needs this, leatherworking needs this, and I didn't. And I saw a whole bunch of stuff that would be useful as, for rating. So I just assumed that those are the big 3. But you're saying there's a 4th one?
Yeah, and the way it works is this. I would say this. Once you hit 89, head over to the Dread Wastes and start doing the quest there because that'll unlock your dailies for the Calaxy. And you might as well do that while you're going from 89 to 90. I did not do that. And then so I hit 90. And then the next day I spent almost several hours going through that zone, trying to just to clear it to unlock the dailies. Plus, the gear you get out of there is pretty decent. There's 3 IE level 450 pieces of gear that are just quest rewards from that zone. So that'll that'll help it. So when you hit 90, you might actually be able to start going into heroics right away and not have to spend as much time trying to gear up just to get into the heroics. So there's the Calaxy, and they have some Valor gear that's tied to the reputation. They've got a neck piece you can get 1250, and you only have to be honored with them. That was the first piece of gear that I bought. I actually got that the other day, and I don't know that there's any point to necessarily hoarding your Valor for something specific in mind. So I would have no qualms about anyone spending their Valor to get that neck piece right away. It's pretty easy to obtain.
All right.
But yeah, then there's the Golden Lotus, which is the Eternal Veil, which is where our new capital city is. You can start questing there. That's a slow go. And the thing is, you have to be revered with them in order to unlock the Shadowpan dailies and then the August Celestials dailies.
Oh, really?
So you kind of have to grind your way through the Golden Lotus before you can really work on your reputation with Shadowpan. Now,
So
there's
once-
some regular quests in the Town Long steps that give you Shadowpan rep, and I haven't finished that, so I don't know where I'll be with them just through the regular quests, how high, if I'll be honored or revered. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look at my reputation sheet to see exactly where it is. But the big thing is,
how do you get started with the Golden Lotus? You have to be 90, or is there a quest zone that you can start at an early level?
no, you have to be 90 because it's in the area that unlocks after you hit 90, where our, like I said, the little city is with the portals, auction house, banks, and all that sort of stuff.
Okay. I didn't know that city existed. I've been using Stormwind, obviously.
Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, like I said, you can't get there until you're 90.
Yeah.
And there's
All
a
right.
quest chain from Anduin Wind to kind of open up the gates.
Okay, so I do have the quest to go find Anduin.
Okay. Yeah, so make sure you do that.
All right. And so, okay, I guess my general question is, what areas or quests should I be focusing in on while I'm leveling to make sure I don't have to go back and do quests once I no longer need the experience?
Well, definitely
Obviously,
do Dread Waste is one zone you should hit
for
when
the
you're
Calaxy.
leveling. Yeah.
And then you have the Anduin one that leads you to the Veil. What was it called again? The Veil something or other?
Like the Eternal Veil, or I think it's the Eternal Veil.
Okay. And then until you get...
And the Town
that
Long
gives you the
Steps
Golden
is probably
Lotus,
another one to look at too.
Okay.
But I would
Town
do the
Long
Dread
Steps.
Waste first. And,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But that's what they've done with the rep. It's kind of interesting with the Shadowpan. So, and the vendors, there are 2 vendors. If you go into the Town Long Steps, kind of near I can never get these names right, the Niyazao Temple or whatever. Up top of that temple, there's 2 vendor NPCs. One does Justice, one does Valor, and they have all the gear from all the factions there. So that's a good place to go to look and see what's available and what cost and what reputation you need to have to get it. So that was kind of nice.
That's convenient.
Yeah.
You guys want to get into questions before we go?
Yeah, let's do that if possible. We'll get some Q&A.
Yeah, well, we've got 2 of them here, so let's go through these. Dome Splitter writes in and says, "Hey, Allie, there was no mention of cogwheel gems in the MOP gem guide." I assume that's the one that Frost had done. I was wondering if the guys have any suggestions for the 2 cogwheel slots in the new engineering helm, crit and mastery for BM.
I would say, unless you have a good reason not to, I would use hit and expertise.
Yeah, hit and expertise, that's what I had done. I've seen a lot of people use crit and expertise as well. I mean, I guess it's just going to depend on what your needs are. I mean, that's 600 expertise and 600 hit. To me, I thought that was the way to go because that saves you a lot in reforging.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to end up having to reforge every single piece of gear into some sort of hit and expertise in order to get capped. I mean, it's really what you're going to end up doing. So I would go with hit and expertise. And then as you get better gear, maybe you can swap one of those 2 out for crit down the road.
Yeah, and my understanding is that all of the secondary stats except crit and hit and expertise are of approximately equal value, close enough that it's not worth min-maxing.
Yeah, certainly
hit
for,
and expertise.
for beast mastery, that seems to be the case.
Yeah, we'd probably want to look into it again for survival, but for hit and expertise, they're greatly quite a bit more, less than agility, obviously, less than double, but definitely more than any other secondary stat, but only until you cap. So what that means is everybody's always going to cap if they can. And what that means is that if you're going to cap anyways, you'll give yourself a lot more flexibility to min-max among the other secondary stats if you front-end load. I mean, if you have a choice between hit or crit, take hit until there's no point in it anymore, until you can't reforge out of it.
Yeah. And again, I think the idea for other gemming is basically agility whenever you can, and just there's a little bit of logic there with your socket bonuses, depending on what the socket bonus is and how much is it for, to dictate whether or not you want to go for the socket bonus or just toss in a red agility gem. And it's not all that complicated. I know Frost had it up on his guide, so you can easily look that up there.
Yeah, he might have to go and revisit that for the engineering ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although it's a little different. Normally he doesn't do profession bonuses, except the engineering one is kind of specific. It makes you choose between secondary stats. So,
yeah.
What was our next question?
Our next question is from Shroud Viper, who says, from a PvP perspective, what level 90 talents would you choose for BG pugging? So this is for just pugging Battleground at level 90. Which would you choose?
I would say definitely Power Shot, based only on the advice from Zumio. I'm not level 90 yet, so I can't say for sure, but it also kind of stands to reason. I think it's a pretty long cooldown, and it's a bit of a wind-up, right? So those are the two downsides, but the upside is that it's got a lot of burst.
Yeah, it's got does a fair bit of damage. Like I said, it does have the knockback ability. I think it's an AOE. I want to say it's an AOE knockback, too.
I think it is, yeah.
It's not even just a single target knockback, so that's...
I think they're all AOE, aren't they? Glaive Toss, Power Shot, and the other one. Barrage. They're all AoE.
Yeah, Barrage is definitely AoE. So Glaive Toss, I hurl 2 glaives towards a target, each dealing damage to each enemy struck and reducing movement speed by 30%. So that's not bad for PvP either, right?
Well, it's not worth it. The movement speed reductions are pretty much not that relevant. What is relevant is a knockback, not because it's relevant in the sense that if you're going to get it for free, it's nice to have because it interrupts casting. And it does allow you a slight amount. I mean, even though you can only increase your distance a little bit, it does give you a bit of control. And the other advantage is that, the disadvantage is, like I said, not compared to the other talents, but in general, compared to, explosive shot. The disadvantage is that it's multi-target, not single target. It's got a long wind-up, and it's got a long cooldown. But between those things, they're more than made up for by the fact that it just packs a huge wallop and has a bit of a pushback. So.
Yeah. It's only 20 focus. This is Power Shot, 3-second cast time, but 1 minute cooldown. But it says you wind up a powerful shot, which deals 800% weapon damage to the target, and then 400% weapon damage to all enemies in between you and the target. And then the enemies hit by Power Shot will be knocked back as well. So if you can line it up to hit more than one target, you're going to do a bunch of damage and blow them all. Yeah,
but because the other guys are only getting half a hit, that's pretty much a lot less relevant. Like it's going to, I mean, generally in PvP, what's most valuable is single target focus burst. Everything else is less desirable. So AoE breaks CC, damage over time is only useful if it's applied and really dumped on someone. It's not as useful as, for example, a big crit would be. But this is I think because really PvP is not about how much anything per second you do. It's about how much anything you do in one big chunk to make it harder on the healer. That's why everybody talks about taking. I just said the name before. The self heal there, the talent for the self heal, not exhilaration. What's it called again? It's the green icon. It heals your pet for 100%. Oh, was it exhilaration?
Yeah, exhilaration.
Oh.
Yeah, it heals you for 30% and your pet for 100%. That's exhilaration.
What is wrong with my brain and words? Anyways. But yeah, the reason exhilaration is better for PvP than any of the other options is because anything that gives you even if it's a lot less, like even a small self-heal that's on demand and therefore, considered burst is better than something that's sort of spread out over time. In PvE, it's much different. What matters is how much you've done at the end of the minute. So damage per second. In PvE, your damage per minute, damage per second is irrelevant. What matters is what was the biggest amount of health you could take away in any short 5-second window, because that's generally how long you can expect to be able to CC a healer before they start trinketing, bubbling, and doing all kinds of crazy cooldowns to survive. So that's my answer, power shot. And that's my reasoning, even though I haven't had any direct experience with it. Also, Zumio was pretty clear on that was his choice when he was in beta. So until I see otherwise, I'm going to say power shot.
Yeah, and he wasn't vague about that at all. He didn't even hesitate when he talked about
he's got a YouTube channel that I've been meaning to check out where he's been doing some level 90 PvP in Arena. The Arena season is officially started now, so I'm definitely going to be checking that out and see what he uses.
Yeah, and the description for Barrage says, rapidly fire a spray of shots forward for 3 seconds. That's not the behavior I see out of that 100%. I definitely see things going left and right and in odd places, sideways.
I was kind of hoping that would be like, I don't even remember what it was called, but in Final Fantasy VII, one of the characters had a gun on his arm, and one of his abilities was just to like absolutely just destroy something by just shooting huge amounts of small damage at it over a really short period of time. I was kind of hoping that Barrage would be like that, just like a single target, massive damage, like couple second channel, like doing 7,000 a hit, but like 200 hits in a second or something crazy like that. Like that, I think would be an awesome ability. But we don't
I would be okay with it being a single target and do maybe a little bit more damage than it does. I mean, it's like I said, it's my favorite of the level 90 talents, but I know it apparently doesn't do as much damage as some of the others, and I've had some wonky behavior on trash pulls, at least in some of these 5-man. So
yeah,
I'm kind of putting that one on hold for a little bit, just going with Glaive Toss like everybody else. But I like Barrage.
I would like it if they were to redesign Barrage to not even have a target. You just pick a direction, and everything in that direction gets hit by your bullets. You actually have to aim it. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be like the old volley ability. And that's initially what I thought it might be like. That's what they were going to give us back. That they'd give us that little targeting, reticule, and you just aim it where you wanted to, and then it would just channel the shots just like volley. I figured that's what it would be, but no, you actually have to have something targeted in order for it to work.
Yeah, my preference would probably be something more like the flamethrowers on the back of one of those turrets in PvP, something where you actually just pick a direction and it goes. But that could work too with a red targeting.
Oh, that would work too. In fact, in the Dread Waste, there's a quest that you have to destroy some spider eggs, and it's exactly what it is. You click on it, and it's a little flamethrower, and you can just move left and right while the thing goes, and you can move around while it's going off. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I imagine you can probably hear I keep on muting my microphone because I'm being summoned by my 4-year-old. We
are over here.
Yeah, I think we are over, so that's going to have to wrap us up for the day. You've been listening to episode 147 of the Hunting Party Podcast. This is Euripides from Out DPS, WoW Insider, and the Call to Auction podcast.
And I'm Dark Brew from thebrewhall.com and the Brew Hall on Twitter.
And I'm Alexander from the Hunting Party Podcast.
And that was Alexander. We're on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, and if you don't use any of that, we have RSS feeds on the show notes. And if you like us, don't be shy about leaving us a review on iTunes or YouTube, especially one where you mention how uncommonly hairy Frostheim's wrists are.
You can submit a title for this week's show by emailing us at huntingpartypodcast@gmail.com and have your name mangled on air by professionals.
Like you.
All right, stay thirsty, my friends, and remember to drink your Dark Brew Lager.
Don't forget to spare and neuter your Feral Druid.
And don't forget to pay your dues.
And that's a wrap. That was a great show.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I was nervous when we said this. I don't know if we said this on the air or before or whatever. We were talking about it before. And I said, anytime it's a light news day, I'm always worried that we're not going to be able to... we're going to have this long gap of silence because we have nothing to talk about. And it's never the case.
The only time I'm silent is when I have to mute my microphone because my kid's trying to get me to blow bubbles or something.
I can jump shot, BM, MM, and SB. I can rock out any tree. Never about my threat, 'cause I've got FD and misdirect. Catching loose mobs in my traps. I never miss, 'cause I am hip capped. 'Cause I'm the hunter, not the marked. I'm the fighter, not the spark. I'm the kiter, not the kite. I'll top the meters every fight. Raiding and game, dealing death. Just me, my gun, and my trusty bed. Now let's begin with Illidan, Osirian, and Gil'jadan, Magdamar, Asgalor, Gruul,